Hello everyone, my name is Apurva and welcome back to another episode of my series 100 Days, 100 Problems, where I take your Power Apps challenges and turn them into working solutions. This is day 16 and let's take a look at our today's question. I'm looking to use Power Apps to create something that can be used at a botanical garden to track plant phenology. These are my requirements. Needs to log date, location, plant name, Phenophase, photo reference, and notes. Must be able to host photos. Location, plant name, and Phenophase should be a searchable dropdown to avoid repeated typing. Data should be accessible, viewable, and shareable. Desktop and mobile capabilities. For this, first let's create a database. I'm going to navigate to SharePoint and create list. First, we'll create plant list. In this, I will create two columns. One would be plant name and another would be scientific name. If you want, you can also utilize title column as your plant name, or you can create a separate one. Spoiler alert, I don't know any of these names and I just told ChatGPT to generate a list for me and here it is. Now let's create another list for locations. We will again have two columns, location name and zone. Then let's create our third list, which is Phenophase. Here we will have only one column, which is the Phenophase column. And then finally the last list, which is observations. Here we'll record when the observation happened, what was observed, and all the other details. First, we'll have a date and time column, which will store our observation date. Then we'll need a lookup column for plant, location, and phenophase. And for all these three columns, we'll point to the original list that we just created a while back. Then we'll need a multi-line column for capturing all our notes. And then lastly, I'm going to create one more column, which is a person column data type for observer. Now, this was not the part of the requirement, but this is just something good to have. Basically, this will keep a track of observer who is making that observation. We have added all the columns except one. We need a column or a place to store the photos, but we are not creating a separate column. If you go to settings, list settings, and click on advanced settings, there is a setting for attachments. By default is enabled. Unless it's disabled, enable it. So now every record that you create in this list can have attachments, and these attachments will be the place basically to store our photos. To add attachments or photos to this record, you'll double click on this and click on attachments and add the pictures that you need. With this, we have our database ready. We have a list for plants, locations, Phenophases, and lastly, observations. Coming back to our requirements, one of them is to make our app compatible for both desktop and mobile. Now, when you want to make your app responsive to any device you use, we need to start thinking in terms of containers. Instead of adding controls and everything to your screen and then fixing their X and Y positions, you need to add containers, and inside those containers, add your controls and everything. If you're looking at your app on a desktop, everything will expand horizontally, and on mobile, the layout stacks vertically. You can have one main vertical container, and inside that you can add multiple different containers like for header, for body, footer container, and so on. It depends upon your UI. I'm going to show you how it's going to look like. For that, let's add a vertical gallery here with the sample data. Also, you need to make sure that the layout that you're using for your app is set to responsive instead of fixed. You can find that setting in the settings. And then in the play mode, you can switch to different devices or set your custom dimensions to see how it's going to look on a mobile or a tab or any other device. Coming back to our app requirements, I'm going to delete this gallery and add a form instead. And also we need to connect to a SharePoint list to bring all the four lists that we created for plants, location, observations, and Phenophases. Once we have connected to our data source, I'm going to change the data source for this form to observations. Let's remove any unwanted fields and also add the relevant ones. Here we'll also add attachments so we can attach our photos, and along with that I'm going to create a custom data card so I can add the image control in that, because I also want to view the image that I just added. So in attachments, when you attach any file, you can just see, okay, one file has been attached, but you can't really see the image. Make sure the mode of the form is new so that we can submit new entries to the observations list. Then we also need a submit button so that we can submit our record. Now here I'm not focusing more on the UI, because right now you can see the button is really out of the container. But when you are working with containers, make sure you have a proper UI and everything set. Right now I'm more focused on the functionality. So let's work on that. Now on the onSelect property of the button, you will write submit form and the form name. And then you also need to reset the form so that any new entry can be added. So let's test this. Now here in Observer, you can see my name is not visible. For that, you need to go to the fields and see what the value is set as. So here it's pointing towards claims. We will change that to display name. Once the image has been added, for it to be visible in the image control, we're going to set a variable on add file. We'll point it to the attachment that this particular control has. So just copy the name of this control and write dot attachments. Then we'll use this variable on our image control, but here we will also use first function so that we can display its value. Now let's remove the image that we previously added so that we can set the variable this time. Also, if you remove this image from the attachment, we should also not see the image in that image control. So for that, you will set another formula on remove file of the attachments. Now if you attach the file, you can see the image, and if you remove it, you can't see that image. Moving on, if we now try to submit this form, it will get submitted and it will also reset the form. But this image control was not a part of this form, we added it manually. So we also need to reset this variable so it gets cleared after we submit the form. So copy paste the same formula on the submit button, and now let's try to submit a new record. Now if we click submit, the whole form should reset and the image should also go away, and in the backend you can see a new record has been created. With that, we have also completed needs to log date, location, plant name, Phenophase, photo reference and notes requirement, and it's also able to host photos. Now let's extend this further. What if we need to edit a record? So for that, I'm going to create a separate screen. And again, here you can, if you want, you can use one of the templates so that you don't need to add containers. On the top, you have the header, and then you have the side container and the main container. On the left side, you can show the list of observations that you already have. And then once you select, you can edit it on the right side, something like that. Now, once you have your gallery ready on the left side, I'm going to create a form on the right side. Again, here we'll choose all the relevant columns that we need and then remove the ones that we don't want. Once you have all your fields, then go to item property of the form and write gallery on the left side dot selected. So now whatever record you select on the left side, you can see its detail on the right side. If you want, you can also change the column count. You can see things even more better. And if you think your notes is going to be bigger, you can change its height and you can change the mode from single line to multi-line. Now currently the form is in the edit mode, but if you want, you can switch between edit and view mode. For that, I'm going to add two icons, one for edit and one for view. Now on this edit button, you are going to set a variable for the mode of the form. Similarly, on the on visible property of this screen, you are going to set it to view. So when you come on this screen, by default, the form is in view mode. And if you click on this edit button, only then it goes to edit mode. And I've also added another icon so that if I click on this eye icon, I can switch the mode again back to view. And then finally on the forms display mode, you are going to write a formula saying that if this var mode, the variable that we just created, if it's edit, then the form mode would be edit, or else if it's view, then it should be view. So let's come back on this screen from screen 1. Currently you can see it's in view mode. I click on edit, it's in edit mode. And if I click on the icon, it's again in view mode. Again on the submit button, you are going to write the submit form formula and we are going to submit this form. So let's edit this third entry from budding to dormant. You can see this is the third entry. If we refresh this, this has been updated. Now, going back to our requirements, we also need a searchable drop down to avoid repeated typing because the entries might be in hundreds. So, let's do that. For that, I'm going to add three drop downs. And because there is no space up here, let's move these two icons. Right now, I'm not focused on the UI, so you will see me adding this randomly. But for you to do this properly, you need to add a container, a horizontal container, and inside that horizontal container put these two icons so that they are aligned properly horizontally. Coming back to our drop downs, we needed three drop downs, one for location, one for plant name, and then the last one for Phenophase. Now, once you have set up the drop down, we also need to filter our gallery based on the selected value in this drop down. So, use filter function and then map the correct drop down with the location, plant name, and Phenophase. Currently, with the selection that we have in our drop down, we don't have any data. That's why it's all empty. So, let's go back to check in our database what data we actually have. Now this drop down works really great if I need to find particular plant from a particular category. But what if I want to see all the records that are available, right? So for that, we don't have a all option in our drop down. So we'll have to create it. So there are multiple ways you can do this. One of the way is on app start, you can write clear collect, which basically clears the collection and adds all value inside that collection, and then collect the values from your database inside this collection. So we are going to create three different collections, one for location, one for plant, and one for Phenophase. Now that we have all our collections, we are going to initialize this and then point this drop down to that collection that we just created. Now, because we are using a collection, instead of the location name, plant name, and Phenophase, we need to write selected text dot value. Now, if you notice, our gallery is still empty because in our database, we do not really have a value that matches all, right? So here we need to modify our formula to say that if any drop down selected text dot value is equals to all, or the value that is selected in the drop down. What this basically means is if the dropdown says all, ignore the filter completely, otherwise, filter it with the matching records. And same goes for all three. Now, as per our database, we have two plants in the rose garden, and we can see that here. With that, we have completed all our requirements. But before you leave, take a look at the final version of my app and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Before going to the final version of the app, there was one more requirement which was to make the data shareable. For this, I've created a separate video where I show you how to generate the PDF and send it to your email. So I'll put the link somewhere here in the video or in the description to check it out. Now let's go see the final version. This is the final look. Now it still has space for improvement, but this is what I got after putting in couple of hours. We have got the menu for the home page, and at the bottom I've also added a footer so you can navigate to different locations. In observations, you can add new observation, and also we can have multiple images. So I've also added that feature here of selecting multiple photos. You can decide how many photos you want people to be able to add. And then here notice how I have disabled observer because I want the person who is making this record to be the observer. Then if we click on the observations below, you can see the list of all the records in the database. You can filter it with our drop down, or on the right side we also have the edit icon. So if you want to edit any record, you can also do that. Then we have plants list. I have mapped the pictures from the existing records in the backend, and for any images or any records that are still not found, we have kept the sample image. Then we have locations. Here I've just randomly downloaded some image from Google, and on the right side I've displayed all the locations we have. And lastly, we have Phenophase. Here you can define a Phenophase, add the description, you can search it, And one more thing, you also want to see how your app is going to look on different devices. So you can click on inspect and pull up the dimensions drop down. And then from there, you can choose different devices and see how your app is going to look on different devices like mobile or tab and all. And that's about it. If you like this video, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time with another problem.